Hey everyone, today on the podcast we have Sean Richardson, the
Hello.
founder of BAMFHammer, back for the second time.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great. You guys just cut in after I was done praising Jake's garage gym, which I can see behind him, and now I've got to pray about envy.
Well, today we're going to kind of dive into the current state of Sean's business. He's going through some turbulent times, I think you can call them.
Yeah, sure.
And, this is kind of like a live update of what's going on. And hope you guys find this interesting, Sean, his story. And then if you can, we'll talk about ways you can help as well. But number one, Sean, thanks again for coming on. For anybody that hasn't heard of BAMFHammer, or anyone who just hasn't been along for the ride for the last number of years, can you give maybe a 2-minute summary of the story of your company?
Sure. Okay, 2 minutes. I feel like I should set a timer. I had no friends growing up, but I read a lot of comic books, and then I got into acting, and then I got into stunt work. And since I liked comic books, when the Marvel Cinematic Universe came out, I was really into it. And I watched Avengers, and Chris Hemsworth threw a hammer, and I was like, that's not how that would work. So I bolted a piece of wood to a piece of steel and created the first BAMF hammer. 2 years later, it was made out of rubber, so you could smack it on the ground. And I was making them myself and selling them in 2022 when my house and my shop burned down. My wife divorced me in September. We found a new manufacturer. He quit in December. He didn't tell me until February. I found a new manufacturer in May. He started making the hammers again. The molds broke. He needed to redo the molds. He told me everything was great. He sold his company in December of 2023. It was purchased by Rubber Logics up in North Carolina in December of 2022. The factory relocated. Everything seemed great. And then 3 days ago, the manufacturer in North Carolina quit. Did I get it in under 2 minutes?
Yes, that was very good. 30 seconds. And then, yeah, I'll plug the link. But we actually did a podcast maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it was about a year ago. We were talking about going up to Home Gym Con and everything.
Got it. Well, yeah. So we did a lot of that story. Didn't necessarily talk about the manufacturing side of things. But I'll plug that link if anyone wants to hear the full story. Just know it's not 100% up to date. But if you could just
by the hour.
If you could maybe go into a little bit more detail about the manufacturing story timeline, I'd be curious to hear where was it first, why did you change, and then lead into the current issue again.
Absolutely. So an incredible amount of it has to do with trying to make a good product. When I made the first hammer, it really was kind of a goof. But as I started to train with it, I was overwhelmed by the thought, if I can't slam this on the ground, it doesn't serve any purpose. And I didn't want the people who bought it to have two things. My father's family owned a lumber mill. My grandfather and his brothers, he had 6 brothers, they owned a lumber mill together. So when I was growing up, I didn't get grounded. My dad would just order wood unsplit and go think about what you did with the sledgehammer. So seeing a sledgehammer in a gym environment always kind of bothered me, because a sledgehammer is not a training tool. A sledgehammer is designed so that your body is more effective over time. You use less muscle to use a sledgehammer to get the job done. And that's not what strength and conditioning is. We create neuromuscular growth through creating disadvantageous position. And that's not what a sledgehammer is designed to do. So as I'm thinking about the idea of this product, I'm going, okay, does it fix that question? And the answer is yes, if you can create it out of a material that can redistribute force, essentially. When you use a sledgehammer and tire, the tire takes the momentum generated by the human in the sledgehammer and it distributes it around the surface area of the tire, making it less reboundy. That's the point. But for a training tool, if we're looking to create the greatest feedback loop of neuromusculature. If all the force you put into the ground was redistributed back into the body and asked to control it to create the next rep, that would create a lot more, it'd be more of a disadvantageous environment for the body. So I started going, okay, we got to make the hammer out of rubber. And I found a material. I started making them to the degree that I could in my garage shop. So I found this material that was dense enough. I cut it down. I bored a hole in it. Like, I had to create a way to cut this stuff because it's not meant to be cut. My entire lower living room smelled like burnt rubber on days where I was cutting. And I had to create a ventilation system in my garage to pump the air out so that my house wouldn't stink. But it worked. If I made it out of rubber, you can slam it on the ground, the right type of rubber that was tough enough, you could slam it on the ground and it would work. And we started selling them, and people were buying them, and 2021 was a pretty good year. And we were kicking things off in 2022, and I'm not going to be able to talk about this without talking about the divorce. Crap. My ex-wife and I were talking about, I couldn't make them fast enough for the orders that we were producing, and we were getting a lot of interest, but I couldn't make them fast enough. So we started talking about, okay, we need to find a manufacturer. We need to redo the design and figure it out. And while that conversation was starting to occur, there was an accident, and my house and my shop burned. And I'm never going to know whether or not it was my fault, to be honest. I know the heart of the fire was the place where my welding table sat, and I just got done welding a hammer. But I had a ton of fire prevention in place. It could have been a short in a couple of different things, but one way or the other, my house burned, and I was the only one home. Me and the dogs, and the dogs are okay. But we lost everything. And so now we have a choice. If BAMF Hammer is going to continue, we've got to make the manufacturing choice. We got to figure that out because I don't have any more stuff. And I'd invested a lot. So I called in a bunch of favors, and somebody from, Will from Homegrown Weightlifting, who, by the way, they are making a thin 45-pound bumper plate right now that is absolutely fantastic. If you're a home gym owner, you should absolutely check them out. I think he should be posting something about this because I talked to him about it. But I told him he needs to tell everybody how many of his thin 45s he can fit on a conventional barbell, because the standard Crumb 45, you can only fit about 4, and I think you can get 7 of his 45s on a regular barbell, not an elbow bar. Anyway, Homegrown Weightlifting in Kentucky. Check him out. He saved me. He completely, he saw the hammer. He was interested in the idea. He spent a lot of time in CAD and came up with this great design, and he kept us alive for a year. But there's a reason why nobody's made a recycled rubber strength training hammer. It's because it's a pain in the neck. It's so much easier to do made out of steel. And Will had a couple of other projects on the go, and our relationship split, and that's fine. He kept us alive, and we had this great design. So we made a couple of phone calls, and we got introduced to High Temp, which, if you're in the space, High Temp was the GOAT forever when it came to chrome rubber products. And so we switched, and the molds needed to be redesigned to fit the presses at High Temp. So that happened. And at that point, the main problem that we run into kind of shows up, where the owner of High Temp looked at me and was like, I like the product. I think BAMF Hammer can do a lot of cool things. but you need to be selling them in order for us to be able to make that relationship. So we're going to retool these designs and these molds, and we're going to get going. I was like, okay, great. But in the midst of all this stuff, the house burned in February, and my wife left in September. And I was a stay-at-home dad working on this thing in the background. So the financial side of the thing really, we weren't in a good spot. And I was trying to get back on my feet. So I had a place for my kids to sleep. And it was a big struggle. So when it came down to having a conversation with this manufacturer about maybe keeping the product alive, and I'm terrified, but I'm going, you need to tell me how much these molds are going to cost, because I can't afford much. And he goes, listen, don't worry about it. I think the product could make a lot of money. So let's wait for a bit and have the conversation about how much the molds are going to cost after we're selling units. And maybe I'm a fool, but I looked at that and was like, I couldn't have asked for anything better, but you have to trust somebody in business. And, it's a cardinal sin, I guess. So we start making hammers, and we're doing the 5s and 7.5s. We're able to expand the line, because we were doing 3. We were doing a 10 pound, a 20 pound, and a 40 pound. Now we're doing 5 kilo, 7.5 kilo, 10, 12.5, 15, and eventually 20 and 25. We're able to expand the line to the way that I wanted it to work, because that's how the way they're pressing it, we have more, we can do more, which is great. And then we're running into delivery problems. And, I was like, hey, how long are these things going to take? And the owner of the company's like, probably like, 2-3 weeks once we get the orders. Like, okay. So we adjust the website, and we try and set realistic expectations that, hey, these are made to order, so it's going to take some time. But then we're missing our deadlines, and it got weird. And then I have a conversation in October of last year, and it's not with the owner of High Temp. It's with the guy who's running the company because the owner's trying to retire, and there's somebody else running the factory. And he was pretty honest about how hard the hammers are to make and what the actual delivery times are, which I hadn't heard. So at that point, I'm just worried about the customers that I've lied to. So I thought we were doing something else. I thought we were going faster. So I'm calling people and saying, hey, I thought we were in this place, but we're actually in this place, and trying to refund everybody. And, but to a degree, begging and going, look, please, like, if you're willing to wait, let me see if I can figure this out. And maybe I shouldn't have done that. And then December of 2023 rolls around, and we always closed up shop for Christmas, trying to make, get hammers under the Christmas tree. And we failed in a couple of regards last year that I had to apologize for. I was happy to apologize for. I wish I could have done more. And then I'm supposed to go out to the factory to pick some hammers up, and I get a phone call in January, and it's a guy. He goes, hey man, my name's Kevin. I work for Rubber Logics. We just bought High Temp, and you're one of their contracts. We just wanted to have a conversation about what you want to do moving forward. And this is the first I've heard of it. I had no idea that they were in the midst of selling. I had no idea that was a problem. It turns out things weren't going well. And, I'm just a contract, and I don't have a contract, which really, really probably makes me a fool. That I didn't put anything on paper. But, I talked to this guy, and he likes the product. He thinks the hammer's cool. They're looking for something they're acquiring this company. They're looking for something to take them into the future and let them stand out. And then sitting in the background of all of these other projects is this weird little rubber strength hammer that maybe, the sales director was like, whoa, wait a minute, that's kind of cool. It's just sitting in the back. And then there's a 2.5 month process of relocating the factory from Alabama to North Carolina. And I've got orders sitting. And so I'm calling and I'm apologizing and I'm trying to set realistic expectations. And, the sales director is telling me about meetings that he's having and going, dude, I was talking to this guy and he was like, hey, you got anything else going on? And I was like, yeah, we kind of got this thing. It's just hammer. And he shows it to people and I'm getting messages about the positive response. And I'm like, holy crap, this might actually work. This new company has a hold of us. He's already talking about all the problems that existed last time. And it looks like we're getting this thing figured out. But we turned the ads off. Like, I'm not trying to sell products to people that we can't deliver. We were sitting on some old orders. And then I'm not hearing anything. And a couple of hammers go out. A guy emails me because there are problems with it. And eventually I kind of hear back and they're like, dude, these things are freaking hard to do. And we're not making them well and we're having a hard time with it. So what do you want to do? And at that point, it's been months. And so I drive up to North Carolina. I took a week off work. I drove up. I got into the factory. I've never worked in a factory like this before. This is going to sound stupid, but like, BAMF is my baby. Like, I built them forever. So they showed me the setup that they were working with, and I'm already looking at her and I'm going, okay, what's the problem? What's going wrong? The handles were off. The angles and the handles were off, and it makes sense based on how we're pressing them, but you got to figure that out because people, like, the hammer doesn't work if the head's off center. Like, you can't send that out. That's not okay. And I made 30 units in about a week. Like, now, granted, I wasn't being paid, and there was some trial and error. We made of the 30 units, I think I had 4 misfires, things that I wouldn't have sold myself, useful lessons about how it works. And then I write an SOP, and we're like, okay, a previously existing company acquired a new company. They're shorthanded. They're learning a lot on the fly. And the hammer's idiosyncratic. And it makes sense that it took me going up there and going, okay, just give me a week to like sit with it and figure out all the new problems. And then I did. I cleared our backlog. We had no new hammers to order. We were back. And we had just been up to Indiana, the response up at Home Gym Con, which, by the way, if you can get to Home Gym Con next year, it's great. It's like Candyland for all you and your weird friends. It's fantastic. But they, we had a good response there. And then on Saturday or Friday, got an email I was just asking for updates. Hey, do I need to go back to North Carolina to build these again? Am I coming back up to teach one of your employees how to do it? What are we doing? And I got an email and they're saying they're not going to move forward. I understand they acquired a whole new company and there are a lot of headaches that go along with that. I have nothing but great things to say about those guys. Like, if you need rubber flooring, you should call Rubber Logics up in North Carolina. They make a fantastic product and they have a lot of great people that work there, but it's still not the right fit. So that gets us to Saturday. And now we have a problem because the history of the molds has never had any paperwork with it. And I was made a promise by a man who owned a company, but that was last company. And then these guys sold and they acquired all the IP. And now there are these molds sitting in North Carolina, and they don't want to move forward with them, but they did pay some money for them. But there's no itemized list because it's almost like having a baby at a hospital nowadays. They just give you a great big price and they don't tell you what you spent your money on. And it would be useful if we had that because there would be fewer questions. But the situation now is in order to get the molds out of the current manufacturer and onto a fourth manufacturer who is here in Georgia. We met him up at, well, let's put a pin in that because if it doesn't work out, I don't want them to feel guilty. But there's a fourth manufacturer that's interested. But in order to get them the molds, I owe $10,000 to the company that has them now. So I put out a message a couple days ago and was just like, if BAMFHammer's account, Instagram account has 8,000 followers, 8,600 followers, and so I just put up a message. I was like, guys, this is pathetic, and I'm sorry, but if everybody who followed the account sent me $1, I can come up with the rest of it. I can buy the molds and I can get them to the new manufacturer and I can keep the thing going. And dude, I'm astonished at the response that's happened. Like people have sent $4,000. That's crazy. And I think I might be able to do something with that. Like I might be able to get my hands back on the molds. But yeah, that's kind of all of it.
So
sorry, I talked for like 20 minutes in a row.
no,
Probably
that
more
was
than
great. That was great. You did a great job. What I don't want to bash a company.
that.
You
Yeah.
mentioned you like for the most part you had a good experience with them, and just why is the $10,000 needed? What do those molds do for them?
I don't know. Well, I would say think about it like this. As a business owner, he probably feels like he lost out on an investment. And he's trying to recoup some of that. That makes sense. Any one of us in that situation would do the same thing, going, crap, that I should have doggone it. Like, I should have seen that one. I missed it. Is there any way I can salvage any of this? And that's as far as I can tell, that seems like his position. I don't know. Like, I own the patent. He can't use them.
Right.
And to me, it seems a shame to let him go to waste. But it's not my company. He knows what his bottom lines are, and if he needs to make this play to make his company work and feed his kids, that's fine. It makes sense. I'm just, and maybe this is what makes me a bad business person, but I'm like, I have got to. If we assume negative intent out of the guy and set a precedent amongst each other that we can't trust one another to try and do what's right, and then I think it makes us more enemies than anything else. It, like, if you think about the world of fitness is huge. And we all have one goal in common, which is to get people moving. We have that in common. And yet we get so tempted into this idea of, well, my way of doing it's better than your way of doing it. And getting some worth out of that, because worth is hard to find. And so we end up fighting. Is CrossFit better than bodybuilding? There are pros and cons. It depends. What are your goals? Who cares? How about all the people who think there's no place for them in the world of being healthy because they feel judged? What if we just looked at each other and was like, look, I'm going to assume your best intent. If you don't have it, I don't care. I'm just going to try and help people too. And the
Okay, got it.
temptation of
So
Yeah, sorry.
we don't need to go down that road then.
I apologize. That was kind of stuff's been rolling around in my head for a little while.
No, that was good. I'm glad you said that. So if you get the molds, are you pretty confident that they'll work then? Because I think if people do
Oh
want to
yeah,
donate.
I the molds are the new molds are beautiful. I spent some time with them. I burned myself on them a lot. They're really hot when you operate them, but it looks beautiful. I think they produce an amazing product. She's not easy. It's idiosyncratic to do it, but they they make a beautiful hammer, and and the company that I've talked to, it sounds like they want to take a crack at it. It it may not work too. Um, like I say, there's a reason why it's easier to do these out of steel. Um, there's just it's harder. Um, but yeah, we I hope the world of fitness is better with BAMF Hammer in it, just like everything else. Um, and I'd hate to see it go away, but if it's time, it's time. That's okay too. But more than anything, man, I'm astonished at guys like you. Like I this is just a weird idea that I had, and I spent time goofing with it, and now this guy with a podcast that cares enough to reach out to me and say, "Hey, I saw the story sucks. Is there any way I can help?" That
I mean, you know what? I mean, I saw your post, and I saw that, and I was like, that takes more guts to do that post and say you need help than actually giving up, because it kind of shows me how much you care about it. Like, it would have been easier for you to just say, all right, I'm done. Um, so I just have a lot of respect for that. I saw you a few weeks ago. I saw your passion. I saw your energy. Like, you're the type of guy that this industry needs. If there was anything I can do to help, I hope I can. So, like, that's the biggest thing. Like, you're not giving up. If I can help, then I want to help. So
I
yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate you, man. Honestly, like it's when you hit so many walls, it gets hard getting back up again. And then, the moment we're recording this in my closet where I sit to pray by myself, and with the lights off, and I'm just going, God, what do you want me to do? And sure enough, every day that falls out of my face, somebody like you hits me up. So uh, you're you're just as responsible for this as me at this point, because there are too many days where I would have given up if it wasn't for somebody like you. So I, just thanks.
No problem. So how can people help?
Um, I'm gonna call the manufacturer tomorrow and see if I can get the molds for a little bit less. People have already donated. It's insane. It's like $4,000 people have sent. Um, so I'm gonna call them and say, look, I can give you this, and can I please have my molds so
Yeah.
I can try? Um, and whatever the number is sitting in the Venmo, I'll yeah. But it's my Venmo's Sean-Richardson-BAMFHammer. Um, and it. I'm already overwhelmed by the outreach, so at this point, I'm not worried about it. Um, if he said, if I say 20 tomorrow and he says no, then I guess it'll be okay. Um, it'll freaking hurt, but it'll be okay. Um, because if BAMF Hammer's supposed to be a thing, it'll be a thing. There's nothing I can do to stop it.
Awesome. Well, uh, I wish you luck. I'll put that information into the description of the episode.
Thanks,
and
man.
keep us updated. Okay.
I will. Yep, absolutely. Jake, I appreciate you, man.
All
It
right.
was good to meet you in person.
Right back at you. Thank you, Sean.
Later, brother.